All right. So as of late, we have been having tremendous success with adding people to the database. We're getting significantly better with following up with people. And so I wanted to take some time to talk over both strategy sessions with buyers and then also implementing more buyer rep agreements. So kind of to kick things off first is, why should we do a strategy session with buyers? Go ahead and give me your reasons.
So there's no jump surprises when going through the process of looking for a home.
Yeah, no big surprises, right? You can kind of talk everything out on the front end, definitely. What else?
To show your credibility and also highlight who you are as a person and how you differentiate between you and somebody else.
Definitely, that's a great one. Establishing yourself as the professional, and they should come to you for that type of advice, not their grandpa who's bought a house 50 years ago, things like that. Great one. Thanks, Jen. Anybody else?
Unlock their motivations and establish a relationship. That's how you get that conversation going. Everything starts coming out, so you get to really know who they are, and it also gives you a lot of insight when you know who they are, how to work with them, and how to communicate with them. So everyone's so different.
That's huge. Building that trust. They say buyers aren't liars, they just don't trust you yet. So if you take that time to establish that trust, you can and reveal the truth. So set expectations. The biggest frustration in life is unmet expectations. So by doing a strategy session, you really take this time to set the proper expectations. Right now, we live in a world where the media is creating so much noise around real estate. And so if you ask 5 different people what they think the real estate market is doing right now, I bet you get 5 different answers. There's so much media noise, and it's important to find out which media noise they're feeding into. And so that way you can work to reset those expectations and work within the expectations that they have for the process. You want to be on the same page with strategy, that was mentioned earlier. Invest in your client up front, so you can spend that 1 hour with them on the front end, as opposed to touring them to 50 different properties without having the right one to be found. You can establish yourself as the professional, like Jen said, build that credibility so they come to you for those questions. You can deep dive in wants versus needs, like Soraya said, like really understanding what it is they're looking for. And then last, formalize that relationship, really build that trust. So important. So now I want to talk a little bit about how to ask for the consult. So Spencer, you ask for by far the most consults. What are typically the things that you're looking for the buyer saying that makes you feel like they're ready to be asked for a consult?
When I'm talking to one of the leads, I'm trying to establish their urgency, their timeline to move, where they are living now, and then if I get their motivation to move, then I kind of work on that to determine how urgent their need is, I guess. Mm-hmm. If they're trying to, he's allowed to book. How I try to book the appointment is by letting them know that we have access to more listings than they have access to. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I try to create value by the meeting or by scheduling the meeting, is because everyone wants to just be looking. They think that all the listings are just online and they can just click on Zillow and click request a tour or whatever. There's no attachment to an agent at all. Right. And so what I try to do is say that to see listings that they would be able to publicly, and since everything moves so quickly here, it would work in their interest to have notifications before the property is listed, as opposed to waiting until it's posted on Zillow when everyone else has already seen it. That's a realtor.
Great information there. So one of the big things he unpacked first was really identifying what their motivation is and truly understanding that before he goes for the kill. So he's not like just right away asking for an appointment. He's unlocking that pain point first, and then he might build upon that pain point, or he might go to a value proposition. So his value proposition is that basically, yes, you do have a computer in your pocket. Yes, you can look on Zillow and Redfin really quickly, but you don't have access to everything that we have access to as the licensed professionals. We have members only listings, and we also have pocket listings that are exclusive to our company that only we know about. So if they don't take the time to meet with an agent, then they'll never find out about any of these opportunities. They'll just bounce around from open house to open house and be competing with everybody who's also looking at the general public. So really, really great stuff. Just to talk more about what he said more so on the motivation side. So when you're asking for a consult, when you're looking for that motivation, you're really looking for that pain point. What it is that's causing them to move. And a lot of times we see those in life happening. So they can be death, divorce, diamonds. There's 6 Ds. I can't remember all 6 of them off the top of my head, but basically you're finding what these true motivations are and then digging deeper. And so when you're going to ask for the consult, you repeat back their story. So Miguel, you're living in that apartment and you have your 2 kids and your wife, and you're in a 2-bedroom apartment, and neighbors on both sides are really loud, and the person above you has a dog, and they're walking every day. And I know you're getting really frustrated because they're waking up early in the morning, keeping up late at night. So I really understand you're trying to get out of this place very soon. What I've done for other people, so that's the herd effect. Other people are just like you, and I've helped them in the same situation. So how can I've helped other people in this situation, I can also help you. And then what I can do is get you what I can do is set up a strategy session for you to go over a game plan that will work for you, and is that something that you would find value in? So you're asking for, if that's something you find value in, because you're asking for an inch, you're trying to get a yes. Because if they say yes, they find value in that, say great, then you go ahead and book that appointment. Instead of asking for a mile. If you ask for a mile, then you might not get that inch. But if you get the inch, then you can creep your way towards your eventual goal. So this is a great way to ask for the consult, really dig deep on what that motivation is, tell them you've helped other people like them, game plan, and then would you find value in that? All right, and then when we go into those strategy sessions, one of our objectives is to get a buyer agreement, right? To get an exclusivity relationship with this person. So why do we want to have buyer agreements with prospects?
It lets you know you're not just doing work for free. You know you're gonna consistently help this person out, and they're gonna commit to you and not go to another agent. You're not gonna lose that lead.
Yeah,
That
commitment.
Yeah.
Commitment's huge. What other reasons?
Yeah, so that they can't go buy a house with another agent and you make nothing,
Definitely.
because we're all in it as a job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Does anybody have any experiences where that might have happened before?
Yes, has happened to me 3 times.
Tell us a little about that. Tell us about one of them.
So I had a client who seemed to be like, he was a 40-something-year-old man. You'd think like he was the decision maker. I was showing him properties to the point of like taking it out of my day to show him a bunch of properties. His dad worked with a different agent in the community, and when it was time to write an offer, he wrote it with her instead of me.
That's rough, huh?
Yeah.
How much time do you think you spent with that person?
I did at least 2 full day tours with him.
Yeah,
So like at least, that's a long time.
that's rough. Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Would you say it's also a good time to ask for a buyer rep after you sort of connect them with the lender, and then they have the lender on board as well? Like if you pre-approve them, for example,
Yeah,
Anytime.
right after that?
Anytime.
that's a great time. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you'll see today when we're talking through the strategy session, we have a point in the strategy session that's the perfect time to bring it up initially, and then you kind of prep them for like, hey, I'm going to be asking for this later at the end of the meeting if we decide to work together. But also the pre-approval is a great time because, hey, I went through this, got you pre-approved. We're in the phase now where we're going to start looking at houses before we start touring. I'm going to send you this buyer exclusivity agreement, so that way I can take you to all my properties, both on market and off. Something along those lines.
Gotta buy the cow, you're not getting the milk for free.
Yeah, exactly. So why buyer agreement? So asking for commitment, that's what we had reiterated here, because you're committing to them. You're committing multiple days touring them with no promise of compensation. We are all commission-only salespeople here. We all only get paid if we close the transaction. So it's not too much to ask that if we are committing ourselves to them and really wanting to go the full mile for them, that they commit themselves back to us. Second is the opportunity to provide massive value. And that kind of really builds on that, what I said about the commitment. So when somebody does commit to you, that's when you can really give them everything. You don't have to be worried about sending them an off-market property. You don't have to be worried about sending them a property that you might even not have a listing agreement on. You're willing to go do door knocking. You're willing to go do mailers and spend money. You're willing to cold call for multiple hours because you know that if you find them what they're looking for, they're going to transact with you and not somebody else. So you actually have the ability to give yourself more so to them than you would have otherwise. Next is leveraging time, because when you're looking at properties on the market, now if you have a buyer agreement, you can openly send them to open houses. You don't have to go with them to every property. Now it's good if you do go, because you can find out what they liked and didn't like, and you can find out all those little nuances. But sometimes we know that life gets in the way and you can't be there every single moment. So if you have a buyer agreement, you say, hey, 123 Main Street has an open house from 1 to 3. You can go during that time, or I'm available on Monday at 11 if you'd rather wait for me to go on Monday. And sometimes in the market, we know with how fast homes are coming off the market and how low inventory we have, how important it is for people to go see things immediately. Sometimes if you wait the whole entire weekend, you might miss that chance to get that home. Protect your interest. So if they were to go for that open house without you, kind of same as the ask for commitment, and then time to go hunting. So if you have a buyer agreement, you can really lean into going hunting for them, because like I said, if you know they're going to transact with you, you're going to be willing to put more time to go find that listing as opposed to waiting for it to hit the MLS. All right, so now I wanted to call on Melissa, Jen, and Soraya. They've all been doing a lot of buyer agreements with a lot of buyers and have closed several of them from it. So I wanted to hear from them. What's their favorite ways to ask for this buyer agreement? So Melissa, we'll go with you first.
So ideally it's in the buyer consultation. So, not every single client do I sit down and do that, but it's after we've done the presentation, obviously we'll talk about it today. We preface that we're going to be asking for it, but the way that I explain my reasoning for doing it is that, hey, I just really throw myself into the search for the families and buyers that I work with. And I want to dedicate myself in the same way that I want to also know that you're dedicated to me, because it's a two-way street, and I want to know this is going to be a good fit. And if we both have our commitment on the table, it's going to be the most successful.
That's awesome. So Melissa really asks for that commitment and builds value around how much she's going to commit if they in turn commit to her. Jen, what about you? You've had some great experiences with them too.
Yeah, so I do the same as Melissa. If I have the opportunity for a buyer rep agreement, I will say the same thing, like if it says like, oh, and now, I'm asking for a buyer rep agreement because this is a two-way street. I'm putting value in you, and I would like the same respect back. That's if I'm at a buyer rep agreement. I just pulled an actual client off an open this last weekend. So it was a different situation because we've already spoken once. So because she was talking to me about how the market is and how there isn't a lot of inventory right now, I said, that's great. I was like, yes, there isn't much inventory for you. Obviously, I explained inventory and how it's cyclical, talked about all that. But then I was able to say, if you sign a buyer rep agreement with me, then I can go even further and then start searching in the neighborhoods that you would like to go. So we're doing a buyer neighborhood tour, and then it was and then if we find your neighborhood, then I will go in further, but I need a buyer rep agreement so I can provide that for you.
Yeah, that's great. So Jen's not only leaning on her buyer strategy section, she's also utilizing it in open houses when she's kind of thrown off her structured path. She's doing more the art of it, right? The science would be strategy session, buyer rep, tour, offer. She's weaving it into an art, which is really, really impressive, really great. Good job, Jen.
Thanks.
Soraya, I mentioned earlier, you sent out 5 buyer agreements on Monday.
Woo! Wow.
They're slowly getting signed. They are getting signed, and I think by the end of the week you might sign all 5 of them. So tell us what you've been doing and what's been working and what hasn't.
For me, it's just been action. So I'll give an example. I had 2 young siblings. They wanted to buy a house. They were interested in the house. I wasted absolutely no time to get them the tour. We talked on the phone. We went to the house. We just had our buyer consult at the property. Look, and I used my actions. Look, you asked for something, I delivered it right away. Yeah. And that was my weapon to use with them. Hey, you asked, I delivered. You guys are happy with me. I uncovered motivations. What makes you want to buy? And then kind of playing on those emotions. There's 3 young kids. They want to get their own place. They want to be away from new parents. Yeah, you guys want your own spot. Can you guys imagine if this was your own house? And walking through the house, you could set this up, and you could set this up. It's just really getting into their motivation and uncovering and availing more. And then right on the spot, I'm going to be your agent. And just using my actions and what I did and showing them. And then that was what got me the buyer agreement, because it wasn't so much just my word, it was my actions. And that's what worked for me. So that's about 3 of them so far. And that's what worked for me.
That's awesome.
So Soraya, did you say okay, I'm going to be your agent, and then at that point, then did you say, and with that, this is why, you have to sign this, or how did it go down? How did the words go down? Because
so with that conversation with these siblings, I gave them a little cushion to think about the house and the motivations, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. Let's think, I'm gonna give you guys a little cushion to think, a little time to think. I know that this is a lot thrown at you, so I'm gonna step back a little bit. I wanna give you guys some time to think. I'm gonna reach out to you on Monday at this time. And then we're gonna talk about the buyer agreement. And so they were fine with it. Like, yeah, give us a little bit of time. And then I came back. And I think that cushion and that he wasn't so like in their face, like I was embracing it. He was like, you know, you guys, this is what I can do for you. I'm ready to be your agent. I'm excited to work with you guys. Let me give you guys some time. They saw that I wasn't too pushy. I didn't seem desperate.
Yeah.
And that day, hey, let's sign the buyer agreement. They were ready to go. And also, they had a really negative experience with another agent. And so what the other agent did to them was really unfair. And I felt for these kids, and I'm like, you know what? Let's get your house and motivate them and really lighten that fire. Because when I was like, let's get your house. Let's make you guys homeowners. I want you guys to put this all over social media so everyone will see that you guys are homeowners and you guys did it. And that really just like amped them up to set them by let's get this done. So
Nice.
that's just with me.
All right, pulling off one thing that I picked up on Soraya too is what she said was she made it seem like that was just standard practice. Like this is the next step in the road.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you want to buy a house? Cool, we'll get that buyer rep agreement out and started. Like this is just how the steps happen.
And I am your agent. We were all like, wait, so what did you say? She's
Yeah.
like, I'm your agent. And
Yeah.
so here's the agreement.
Yeah.
And they're
She's
just,
acting as if.
they didn't know any, and not that, I mean, but they didn't think anything different from it, which is what and how it should be in our industry.
And that's,
If I'm your agent,
that's a
then
good
that is
point.
what you sign.
Yeah.
that's a good
Yeah.
point, actually.
Yeah.
Because I feel like,
Exactly.
I feel like it should just become a part of it, you know,
Yeah.
when you're
It
doing
should
your,
be, yeah.
your consults and everything, it's like, okay.
It's like,
Right. So the National Association of Realtors actually says that an agent's job is to sign buyers and sellers and then to represent them.
Oh.
So National Association of Realtors defines this as part of your job. And the people who aren't doing this are acting with out of bounds of what the National Association of Realtors recommends for all agents to do in their process. So just because what people are used to doesn't mean that's the way that it's done correctly.
mm-hmm. That's a great line as well, if someone were to challenge you.
All right, so now we go into our strategy session. So what the things that we're actually saying when we're in these strategy sessions. When we're doing our consults, we have the first couple slides, right, where we go over, hey, we do a little bit of the team approach, we build some value around having additional team members, and then we transition to this slide. This slide is the most important slide of the entire consult. Based upon what they said, this might be the only slide that we do the entire time. So it's a really great place to focus, and you can really take them through the entire journey and understand their expectations, and then set new expectations for how this process is going to go. Really establish yourself as a professional, as Jen highlighted earlier. So I'm going to hand off to a couple of different agents on what they do on these different columns. So Jen, tell us a little bit what you do for the preparation column.
Okay, so when I'm sitting with a buyer, I will be like, so here is our buyer home, our timeline for buying a home. And I'll say, congratulations, you already met with me. That's probably the biggest hurdle that you've thought about today. And I'm so happy that you're here because you're actually having a research phase in this process, and this is where you should be. And then I'll go into tangents. Sometimes a lot of people don't do this, and I think it's somehow I get to the point of like, congrats, you did a good job. You were here, and then I'll go into review the buying home process. And so I'll say to them, so, hey, have you guys ever purchased a home before? And they'll tell me like, no, yes, I did years ago. I said, great. Well, there's many stages in a home buying process. Right now we're in research stage because we are here. And after this meeting, and then I set my expectations. So I said, after this meeting, I'm going to send you these variety of homes based on what we chatted about. It will be in your inbox at this time. And I talked to them about the genuinely homes and buying your home and the process of that. And then I say, after you get your houses and everything, then you're going to go into your home search, which we'll also cover. And then we'll go into the offering phase and closing. And I'll kind of touch base on like what your home search looks like and your offering and your closing during that time. Then I identify must-haves. So then I talk to them about, so now that you know a lot about the process of the home buying process, tell me everything about you. I want to be your best friend by the end of this. I want to know what you like, what makes you tick, why you're picking Carmel, Monterey, Pacific Grove. Tell me everything and build me your dream home in your mind. They'll go in, they'll tell me about their dream home, blah, 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 blah. I'll ask them qualifying questions, so then talk to them more about that. And then I dig down. I'll even have a map with me sometimes to talk about different locations and kind of price and what the price scenario looks in that in those areas. Long story short, I had the map of MLS up, and I was able to go, okay, based on your price point, we're probably going to look in. They said they wanted to be in Pebble Beach. Obviously, they were more like they wanted Country Club West versus, and I had to explain what Country Club West was and kind of talk to them about where their budget would fit and what they wanted. Then after that, then I will talk about, there's not a lot of on the market right now. Because of that, I want to do my best for you. So here is a signed agreement. I'm going to have this, you can think about it, but I will have this in the inbox tomorrow, tonight or whatever, when I send you the other thing with all the other homes. And then I will ask them, how are you going to finance your home? Are you doing the pre-approval or are you a cash buyer? And then they'll go into that, and then I'll say, great. And then this is when you bring up Chad Hawker or one of the lenders that we're using, and you say, I have a great relationship with this. And then I probably bring up the seller buy down that I just did because I feel really hot on that. At that point, I will send that off about how that I did this pre-approval and that I can get them the same thing as my clients that are currently in escrow. And then we talk about my search.
So before we transition, so that was awesome. Thanks, Jen. So a couple of things that I really liked was, number one is she's not only presenting the whole time. You heard her mention several times where she's asking questions. So she's not like just owning the conversation and not really hearing feedback from them. She's asking them questions at multiple points, like, are you pre-approved? What are your must-haves? And things like, have you bought a home? Have you bought it before? Yeah, build your dream homes, things like that, where she's controlling the conversation through questions and then finding out where they sit in their expectations and then presenting thereafter. Other thing I love, and you heard her say something similar last week when we talked about open houses, was she gets really hyped for them in the very beginning. Like, congratulations, you made this first step. Like, this is huge. Most people don't even make this first step. Like, she gets people really excited to be there. And as a result, like, she's a very fun, engaging person. And now they feel like very fun and excited themselves. So she's making the home buying process very fun and very enjoyable. Building a lot of value around like what a big deal it is for them to just get started. It's awesome.
To piggyback off that, if you ever heard Jen do a buyer or one of these pitches, she's belly laughing the whole entire time. She's like, oh, dropping corny jokes, like laughing with them, and they really like banter. And she's just like chuckling away.
And she's like really with them.
Yeah.
Laughing, and they're so funny. And she's like, she's genuine and she's so engaged, and she's not like half listening, reading a script.
It's a very
like
light
it's just her and them, no matter like what's going on around them. Yeah.
I just want to, this does not have to do with that, but I was just on a tour and I couldn't find the house and I was driving around and I was literally like, oh my God, I'm getting hot. And then my client just starts cracking up at me because I was like, oh fuck, like, and then it was like inside, like I felt like that, but I like just telling them that it was like, and then they're like, oh,
breaks
you're
the
fine.
ice.
And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyways.
This should be an enjoyable process for them, not something that they dread. So
Yeah.
That's great. Jen, make sure that they enjoy it. All right, now going into the home search. Melissa, take us through how
Tough act of there. So be a little briefer. So in the home search phase, we preface the fact that, hey, I'm sure you've been using different, search engines online, ask them what they're using, usually touch on Zillow and Redfin and why we actually have our own website that, Real has their own website to where I'm going to let them know that I'm not giving it as an option. I'm going to register them for searches through our portal and explain that it's more accurate and faster than the Zillows and the Redfins. And this will allow them daily or weekly, whatever we decide, but to get instant listings to their inbox, and then they can review it, and anytime they heart them, it'll communicate it to me so I can stay in line with what they're liking. And although I'm going to want to also keep a text chat going so that we can share thoughts, this is just a great way for me to see in real time what they're interested in. So that will continue to go. And then when I see one that I think is like maybe an extra special fit, I'm going to text it to them and I'm going to send them a brief description of the neighborhood and why they might be of interest with that. And that's how we're going to slowly get to know the area, especially if they're out of town buyers. And then we're going to start touring. So usually the goal is that we're going to sign the buyer rep agreement. And so a lot of my buyers now, I'm getting comfortable with the fact that I'm going to send them to open houses on the weekends. And that is the best part of a buyer rep agreement, is I can do that without any fear, right? They ask me if they can go see homes. I always say, like, I'm more than happy to set up a private tour. Would you like to go see, you know, these 7 homes on open, and we'll review after. I'll have seen them previously on broker tour. But then also, of course, we love to set up those initial tours as like the neighborhood tour and getting to know and strengthening the relationship. So it's twofold. We let them know that we absolutely don't want them to ever choose a home until they're head over heels with it. The worst thing that could happen is that they go with a home that they're not absolutely crazy about, and I don't want that either. So once they're sure, then we go into the offering phase.
Great. So something that you mentioned in the very beginning, well, you mentioned not wanting them to use Zillow and Redfin. So what would you be afraid of them using Zillow or possibly Redfin, but probably primarily Zillow?
Yeah. So obviously Zillow Premier agents, right? So Zillow makes their biggest money is the fact that you can pay to get leads on Zillow, and that's big business. So they are, every time they think they're just getting info on the home, they click it, they're being connected to another agent, right? And then Redfin advertises 1% agents, even though that's not accurate in this area, and sell your home for 1%, buy a home for 1%, all of that. So it's just like blasphemy in their face against everything that we're promoting, which is our values of what we offer.
Yeah. So would you ever want to post a Instagram post with a Zillow link?
No.
What might you use the website link then?
Right. So you want to use the website link because then you also can track their activity. So what I learned from the beginning, and I still fight using MLS, is I'll send MLS listings, but then I realize, like, when they're clicking on it, they're not going back to our site. So I try to use it from our site, because then I can see they've returned to the site. How many times have they looked at a house? Yeah. How many times have they clicked on the website email? I mean, I didn't use the search function that much prior to this year, the last, I don't know, 3 months. And now that I'm using it, it's every morning I wake up to like 10 buyers clicking on 5:30 a.m. emails. And it's keeping me knowing, oh, I thought they were kind of on sleep mode. Oh, no, they're looking, So
yes,
I'm obsessed.
Everybody has, I talked about it last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, everybody has these unique websites now through our website. And so you can share your specific URL on like Instagram or Facebook. And so that way, if one of your friends or somebody you know, or maybe it reaches a non-follower, if they go click on that link, then they get taken to our website. They'll go through a forced registration process where they sign up to use our site, and then they become a lead in your database. So you could just post a story on your Instagram, and then all of a sudden that lead gets dumped in your database as a new lead.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty amazing how this can work. And that's like talking on the prospect side, but even bigger, it's on the client side. So like if you're working with somebody, let's say you didn't get that buyer agreement, you definitely don't want them clicking around on Zillow, because they can be contacted by Zillow Flex. And
retarget it. And then if they do it through ours, we're going to then retarget them, which is incredible, because it's being your own information.
So
We can
just
also
really utilize those tools.
More like stalking them, basically.
Yeah.
And
go to the offer phase.
usually this is going to be pretty conversational. And I mean, once you kind of can tell, and then once we're ready to write an offer, we'll kind of go and take as much information as we can. They're going to be asking a lot of questions like, well, is it going to be competing against multiple offers? It's like, well, that's a very case by case, and that happens almost every single time. Well, what should I expect? And the answer I pretty much always lay on them, it's going to be case by case basis. But what I'm going to do is use my resources and connectivity with other realtors. I'm going to figure out what the situation is, and we're going to be able to look at a home. It's been on the market for 120 days. Have they had no offers? Is this one overpriced? And we're going to be able to negotiate aggressively. We're going to be able to know, hey, it's been on the market for 3 days, and we have 10 people over competing against, and we're really going to need to get super aggressive if we're going to want to win this bid. So it's setting expectations that it is a complete unknown, but that I am able to handle it once we figure out what that problem is going to be. That's kind of where I'm emphasizing here. Negotiation details, I can drop in a few things like, hey, we have some tricks of the trade to make sure that you can be the highest bidder without being the overpricing. I'm going to be able to leverage my relationships, etc. But without going into too much detail, you don't want to say, we're going to be going through the RPA and there's 17 pages. Like, you can just kind of briefly touch on everything to a bit. Receiving mutual acceptance, obviously that's when the offer is accepted. This is really, I feel like, a situation where it's best to ask a lot of questions. I also like to preface with a couple things like, hey, even in this phase, a lot of people think that, when they put an offer on a property, it's like they're getting married, where I consider putting an offer on the property at first date. You know what I mean? You're not in any sort of commitment. You could still walk away. And really, we're just testing where their bottom line is, seeing if this is a property that might be a good fit for us. It's very little obligation at that point once you put the offer in. So you don't have to feel like you're getting panicked and oh, this is the one, putting all your eggs in that one basket. And we'll be able to kind of weigh opportunities against each other. Hey, I don't like this price house at $1 million, but at $895, I love it, right? So that there's a swaying fence there too.
Hey Kevin, don't you also talk about your contingencies and what they are, and then waiving versus not waiving them to make your offer strongest, and basically highest and clean is the best? And
I don't talk about that all in an initial buyer consultation because I don't want to start scaring people off at this point. But that's something I would kind of really dive into once they start isolating in on a particular property. I don't want to information dump on them everything at the very beginning and spook them. I want to focus on finding the right home and getting them qualified at this point, and I don't want to put them on third base yet.
So two things. Well, first off, Kevin does a really good job of always building a ton of value in himself as the agent. Like he mentioned several times in there, he's talking about his negotiation strategies that are like exclusive to him, things that he only uses. He's also talking about his agent relationships. So like that's such a huge part about getting offers accepted is those. And Kevin's a person who's networked himself really well with other agents, which I recommend everybody does a lot. But Kevin does a great job doing it, and then also explaining to people what he does and building value himself. So he's like naming himself as the professional. Kevin, something you talked about, I think that would be good to go deeper on, is training them about the offering process, and the offers are free. So I know for most newer agents, when you get into the point where you're like, okay, let's make an offer, and you have a newer buyer, they want to completely unpack the whole property before writing an offer. And I wish Austin was here today because he's had a lot of negative experience around this, and he's learned a lot in the last year. So can you just talk a little bit more deeply about that, like how you explain it to people and how you really ease that process for them?
100%. So I would never do that on a buyer consultation, right? Because I don't want to put undue pressure on any situation and make it feel too real throughout the whole entire time. I like to take baby steps and don't scare them with the big picture. I like to focus on the small step. Realistically, the listing or the buyer, this presentation is to give them a big picture view and get them in preparation and moving into home search. Like this is the transition. Offering is down the road, right? Once you're more serious. Now, when I'm at a property and somebody's starting to indicate, hey, I like this one, and they're starting to get nervous, right? It's becoming real. That's where the fear is starting to kick in. And that during the showings, I'm going to be talking to them. Hey, like this is the thing. Hey, this one's I talked to the agent, it has offers. Like we're starting to get a little real. And that's what I'll start to explain. People feel a lot of pressure. And this is one of the most scary purchases, biggest purchases of their life. So I really like to use the analogy, guys. Putting in an offer is like going on a first date, right? It's a very low key commitment. Now, what was your question?
It was just, getting people to ease people into making an offer.
Ease people.
As opposed to like doing a full contingency or full inspection period where we're going to the city, we're reading all the reports, we're getting a contractor before we make an offer.
So I like to go into okay, so this is like we're kind of feeling each other out. We're going to a first date right now. We could put in this offer. And let's say somebody's saying, oh, I'm not going to buy for 6 months. This is just a research phase. Well, I really like this home. That is like a good place to slip in. Like, well, guys, you can always test it out. Even if you're not ready right now, maybe not at this price, but maybe if the price is too good to be true, we can give it a try. And to keep in mind, you're not committed to this, right? It's a really low pressure proposition. What I want to do is keep it super low pressure the whole entire time so they don't get nervous and bail, right? Because people get nervous and bail, fish off the line all the time. I don't want to keep this thing super tight tension constantly. I want to let it ease into it. So it's like, and listen, we're going to have plenty of time for our due diligence. And say, well, what about this? This is all messed up. Like, absolutely. But when we go into this offer, we want to look at the disclosures, but we want to assume that everything else is perfect. And then we'll have ample time to do our research. And then when potentially the contingency removal, that's like the engagement point. That's when we're getting committed to the property. Now, we're not going to engage until you're 100% satisfied with everything, until you really feel comfortable with this process and you know everything about the home. But let's go into this offer assuming that everything that's not disclosed is perfect, and any new findings that we find, and because we're going to do ample due diligence on this property, anything we find, we're going to renegotiate on that. So let's go in assuming it's perfect, and if we go find out the sewer shot and they never told us the sewer shot, hey, well, that's a whole new thing that we're going to renegotiate on. So this first date, everyone's putting their best face forward. You know, that's why you date for a year, 2, 3 years before you get engaged. And then it's like, oh, wow, this is who you really are, right? Let's get through that honeymoon phase, really do our due diligence, and then we can decide if it's right step to take forward. But
Also, with offering, people have different needs when they're offering too. Some people care about price. Some people care about a really clean house. Some people care about, so it's all about, you know, figuring out that too.
and some people don't want to lose the house, like knowing their motivation.
Or somebody wants a deal or something.
Yeah.
It depends.
So what Kevin was talking about was like really easing them through the process. And two things that he says a lot are offers are free. So don't feel bad about making an offer because offers are free. It doesn't cost you anything to make this offer. And second is when you get somebody who's like hemming and hawing, he reminds them that it shouldn't be a no because there's a price that it still makes sense at.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't make sense at the listing price, he might make sense for $50,000, $100,000 less. And also you're like, well, yeah, I love this property for $100,000 less. Okay, let's offer it then. Let's see what happens.
Yeah,
So ease them through the process.
I'll even tell people, like, I don't believe there's any such thing as a bad offer. I want my clients offering. It's a commitment to me. It's a commitment. It's a warm up to the process. I'm never going to be like, well, this is never going to get it submitted. Let's get that offer going and let's make practice of it and let's get comfortable. And so when the right one comes along, you're not jumping off the cliff for the first time. You're prepared and ready to go.
Excellent. So the last one for closing. So hopefully towards the beginning of the conversation, you did ask if they had bought a home before and what their experience was and what they remember from it, how long it was, things like that. But even if they have experience, some of your worst buyers will be the ones that say, oh, I have bought and sold 3 properties. And it turns out they did in a state that had completely different conditions. They did in a lawyer state, not a title state, and so they had a completely different experience. So you really want to unpack what their experience was. Like, for example, you might have a commercial real estate agent and they have a completely different experience than the residential one, and they'll tell you they're an expert, they're a broker, this and that, but they don't know anything about buying a home, so to speak. So you want to understand what it is for that. If you didn't know what that was, then that's a good time to ask it. And then you just tell them, hey, when we get into this closing phase, this is where we really take the bull by the horns and we handle a lot of things for you. Because you, like Kevin was saying, you really want to ease the pressure of this and not go too deep because realistically, they're not going to remember everything in this phase. And you don't want to make it seem like an overly daunting process. So you say, hey, when we do go into escrow, I'm going to be very hands-on and my team will be hands-on with the transaction coordinator, 20 years experience, so they'll also be helping out with it. So you're getting an introduction from her and the escrow team. The escrow team will be handling all of the details of the contract, and they will be executing everything to their full ability. You will have to pay an EMD, which we will decide on when we're making those offers. It'll be between 1% and 3%, and that'll be due within 3 days. That EMD guarantees your offer for the appraisals inspections. So we'll have an appraisal done on the home, verifying that purchase price is the appraised value. And then we'll also be doing inspections, verifying that the home is in the condition that we believe it to be in. After we go through that process, we'll have opportunities to renegotiate if things don't turn out what we thought. Like I said, we were on that first date. We find out some baggage along the way. We're going to be able to renegotiate terms to make sure this is the marriage that we want to go into. If it is, then we'll remove those inspections, remove those contingencies, and transition into the final approval process. We'll complete a final walkthrough, making sure that the home was kept in the condition in which we initially offered on. And then we'll set a date to sign loan docs. And then the best day comes when we sign closing docs and get keys. So you can really be shorter on this one and make it seem like a very easy process as opposed to like going really deep and making it daunting and scary. This is something that you're definitely going to have to retrain them on when you go to make offers. So don't spend too much time on it other than like making sure they understand what the basis of it all is. So that way they don't have surprises as things come up. So it's really managing expectations more than it is educating them. All right, so now what about steps after a consult? What are some steps we should take after we have a strategy session? Update Sierra, definitely. What else?
Send them a list of properties that you guys discussed during your consultation.
Yes, and then properties or alerts.
and neighborhood conversations. Tell them about the different sub-neighborhoods. We're in a small enough market around here where they should know, and then start ruling out neighborhoods from there.
Really, neighborhoods get one.
Assuming they agree to commit to you, you send them the type form. Oh, well, you fill out the type form and then Jacqueline will send that over.
Great one. That's actually not on my list.
Wait.
I missed that one.
Yeah. Send
That's a
the,
really good one.
actually send the, yeah, that's funny.
So I'll give you guys my list. So update Sierra, I actually broke down into each individual step. So input that summary so that when Spencer tags it, a summary automatically hits the note page. Copy and paste that into the top left corner with the summary and fill it out. It's just quick notes for you to really understand what's going on. And then you can go back to Spencer, and then Spencer can help you more if you have a buyer you met with who's maybe 2 to 3 years out because they're waiting till their daughter's a sophomore in high school and they're looking forward to moving to Carmel, but they can't do it until she graduates high school. So believe me, Spencer wants these things to close. He wants to know about it if they're 2 to 3 years out, he wants to know about it because he can help you because he does want to make sure that in 2 to 3 years this closes as well. So really utilize that. Don't think of it as like inconveniencing him. He wants this to close. He also gets paid on this closing. So use them. Second, you want to update the status. You want to make sure if they're actively seeing homes, that we have them inactive. If they're still in the nurture phase, we have them disqualify. And if they sign that buyer rep agreement, transition to prime. Next, you want to do the follow-up A, B, and C or D so you can stay really organized and understand how often you should be following up with them. Make sure you set your follow-up task no matter what every single time so you don't lose them because you just had an amazing meeting. The worst thing that you can do is go 2 weeks without saying another word to them. If you do that, you pretty much lost them, guaranteed every time. Verify that they're set up on e-alerts for properties or send them that list that you promised them. Probably do both. Send out a list, have a conversation around it, and then also have e-alerts set up so now they're coming back to the website and getting notified to do that. And then last, shoot Spencer a quick note. Thank him for the appointment. Let him know what happened on it. Like Spencer works really hard on setting these appointments, spends a lot of time on it, builds a lot of value, builds his own relationship with these people. And like I said before, he wants to help if it needs it. And Spencer, have you had experiences before where your help came in very, very useful?
Wait, have I been useful?
Yeah, can you think of it? Can you think of an instance where you've been extremely where
He's teeing you up for Santa Fe.
Yeah, was there? No, it was that mission.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Was there an instance where there's an
Austin
agent?
was gonna lose that dude to an open house.
Yeah, so Austin does a really good job of cluing Spencer back in because they have a really good relationship. So Spencer hears about what happens on his appointments. So in turn, he's able to help Austin. So Austin had a buyer who started clicking around to see properties. Turned out that the buyer had by mistake contacted the listing agent and was going to go see the property without Austin. Spencer caught wind of it because Spencer's spending more time in the CRM than Austin is, and then made Austin aware of it. Austin got himself back into the situation and was able to close on it. It was a $3.2 million deal with a 3% commission.
Nice.
So it was a really big deal, and because Austin did a good job of keeping Spencer in the process, Spencer was able to help out a ton, and they both were able to close the deal.
Question. Did he know that he clicked to the listing agent or how did you guys figure that out? Just because
What was the exact thing you figured out, Spencer?
I need to know.
So he messaged that he was heading down to check out a pad. And so I saw that since I went on the collaborator, I get to see everyone's messages.
Yeah.
And then I just let Austin know that whatever he has planned today, he needs to cancel.
That's
but
great.
that's a great example of why like Spencer's spending way more time in the CRM than you are. Like that's the whole point of being an inside sales agent is you have your job is more dedicated to being on the database management, and an agent's job is more to be in the field. So utilize your resources, utilize that team aspect, and then make it so that you guys both make more commissions.
Spencer's Cortana and
And
Halo.
that's another good reason to get people to click on our website, because the dude was clicking around for the houses. That's how he found this house. And so we got to see that, and then Austin, basically when he was able to connect with him, Austin already knew all the houses that he was looking at, so he could have a more informed, idea of what this guy wanted.
Yeah, and another piggyback, but like I have a client right now, buyer rep agreement has been signed. He's the commercial agent, right? And he's sending me links to houses he finds because his wife's on my leads, but for some reason we can't get him on. And I'm able to see the other real estate agent. It's a competitor in Santa Cruz. And I'm like, how did you get registered in theirs? Because I know now that those agents can see all of his activity. Another reason to make sure they're on yours, because if they're not on yours and they're just on Zillow Redfin, they might end up on that guy's, you know?
What if they come into somebody's Zillow Premier agent and that Premier agent
Yeah.
gets to that?
Yeah, and this client doesn't even know that he's being watched by.
Another one steps after the consult is really make an action plan with them on whether they're in research phase or house shopping phase. If they are 2 years out, I like to take them on the neighborhood tour, get them face to face out in the field and just show them around, drive them through, even if you see a house or two, but it really forms a relationship. And if they're in buy mode, get a tour scheduled. When are you coming down? Like that should be an action step. When are you going to commit to me? When are you going to give me 4 hours to take you around and show you houses? Because then you've started the process. Like that should be an action step. Like it's not like, hey, you sign now, like I'll see you in 6 months. It's like, no, let's do this now. Let's start whatever we're starting, let's start.
All right, so a new program that I'm excited to tell you guys about that kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about today is we have a new company we're starting utilizing called Celebrity Agent. They do direct mail campaigns for us. And so they have this program called Buyer Concierge. So we're gonna start using this really consistently with people who are signing buyer rep agreements, are pre-approved, and have high intent of moving soon. And so we're in a situation right now, we're in an extremely low inventory market. We heard last week at Kevin's Real Producers Mastermind panel that right now we're sitting at 1/3 of the amount of properties that we had in pre-pandemic. There's about 600 listings on the market in Monterey County. Now we're down to 220. So we're about 1/3 of what we're used to for supply levels. So we are in a situation where we need to go hunt for more properties. And so this program helps us do just that. What this company does is they send the letter actually on behalf of the buyer. And if you read through the script, it's very customized, it's very engaging. And then since it's from the person, they have a phone number. It's actually just a robo number that goes to the company, and it'll just notify the agent that you're doing it. But if you read this letter, it says, "My wife and I love your condo on Grigg Street." So it's highly customized, and they're doing all this for us. We're searching for a new place to live in Salt Lake. It's closer to downtown with views and handful of streets that are our favorite. So people are like reading the first line, like, "Whoa, that's me. That's my house." This isn't some generic letter. And then we currently own a home, so they're talking a little bit about themselves. They're talking about they love the location of the 4-bedroom, so really, really customized. Would you consider sales? So if they text or call that number, it's going to notify the agent no matter what. And then there's also an agent number for you to get directly. And then just so we would really appreciate your response. So we're going to be developing basically a guidelines for how to get the company to send these on your behalf if you're a team agent. And then also there's going to be opportunities for you to just be able to send these on your own if you really want to just be proactive to kind of fish for listings more so to speak. And the company will be more funding for the buyers that we have that we know are ready to transact and we have commitment from. So they're just kind of going that further. They have 4 different mailing programs they have. The first one is mailing past clients and adoptive buyers. So adoptive buyers are people who buy your listings that you previously had. And so it's mailing them every other month with very custom messages like, "Hey, did you see this one that just sold down the street from you? Have you heard about these events that are in the neighborhood?" They're doing things that are very custom to that person. Next is, and so the team will be sending those on your behalf every month for all of your past clients and for all of your adoptive buyers automatically. So you guys don't need to worry about doing those on your own. Next will be coming soon. So the team will send out 250 to surrounding listings. Next is farming. So if you have a neighborhood that you want to farm, what I recommend most is the neighborhood that you live in. So your neighborhood that you live in is the easiest to farm because you already have a natural presence there. People already know your face. And so if they start getting cards and things like that from you that are highly customized to the neighborhood, then they're going to ring the most true. And then last is this buyer concierge program that I was just talking about. And the company's going to sponsor it if you have a qualified buyer, and we'll get the requirements out to you guys sometime next week. But you can also purchase those at $1.75 per mailer, which, yes, is expensive for mailers, but this company currently has a 2 to 3% response rate on these buyer concierge problems, which is insanely high. Direct mail in general is a 0.1% response rate normally. And so this is 2 to 3%. So 10 to 20 times, 20 to 30 times what people are used to.
So you need to send 30 times less to get the same amount of response.
To get the same response, exactly. What I forgot to mention was on that farm was if you do want to do a farm, and it costs $1.10 per house. So maybe you have like 200 houses around you, around where you personally live, or maybe you want to make it even smaller and maybe only target ones that have maybe been there for 10 years and are 2 stories, or like more probable to be movers, and you can do that on your own as well. So that's kind of how the process will work. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on a one-on-one basis for any of those. But we'll have more information next week on how the concierge program will work exactly.